Evening, everybody. Well, I was doing really good tonight at the meal. I tried not to eat too much of the taco salad. I think it was the 2 pieces of cake and the cookie that got me. So I went overboard. So I'll do my best. Let's get started. You're going to have a Bible in hand, and I'll go ahead and say that probably I will not finish this lesson. As I got into this, it got bigger and bigger and bigger the more that I studied it. And really, the more I realized how much the Bible has to say about pain and suffering and how we're to deal with it. It is a huge problem. It is a big human problem. And so how do we deal with the issue of evil and pain and suffering? And so that's what we're going to be looking at tonight, for sure. And if we don't get finished, we'll just keep working on it until we're satisfied that we have all the answers I'm not sure we'll have all the answers, at least enough answers to deal with this problem that everyone deals with. Let's start with John chapter 16, verse 33. This will probably be the only encouraging verse I have for you tonight. No, I'm kidding. These things I have spoken to you, that in me, capital M-E, Jesus, you may have peace. All right, so in me. So where is our solution, our answers to the issues of pain and suffering? In Jesus. So as one Sunday school teacher, one Sunday school little boy said one time, he said, "Mom, I've got this Sunday school thing figured out." And she said, "Oh yeah, how's that?" She said, "Well, every time the teacher asks you a question, just say Jesus, and you're probably right." So that's probably right. And just say Jesus. And so Jesus is the answer. And he goes on to say, in the world, you will have tribulation. That word tribulation could simply be rendered troubles. You will have troubles. But be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. You will have peace in me. You will have troubles in the world. And you can be joyful, be of good cheer. You can have joy in your heart knowing that your Savior Jesus has overcome the world. All right, let's go from there. The next thing that we're going to talk about is that sometimes we are the cause of our own pain and suffering. So these are usually not the ones that cause us the most trouble. So let's go to Galatians Chapter 6. And when I begin to read this passage, you will recognize it. Galatians Chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. Verse 7 through 10. Galatians Chapter 6, verses 7 through 10. I'm not going to hurry tonight, which is very unusual for me. I'm going to take my time, and let's delve into this and understand it the best we can. So Paul writes to the churches of Galatia. He says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked." So you can't just thumb your nose at God and say, nah, you can't catch me. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sows, that he will also reap. Choices have consequences. And we are, more often than we like to admit, the cause of our own pain, the cause of our own suffering. The choices that we made when we were little bitty can have consequences throughout the rest of our lives. One bad decision in life can affect the rest of your life. So there are many times we suffer, and I will go a step further, and we cause others to suffer because of bad decisions we made, sins that we committed. I won't turn to 2 Samuel, but I'll tell you the story. You know the story. It's David. Committed adultery with Bathsheba. Had her husband killed, Uriah. And seemingly was never repentant until Nathan the prophet came to him and stuck his finger in his face and told David, "You are the man." And then God spoke through Nathan and said, "Because you have done this, your child is going to die." Now just let that sink in. I have been with families whose children have died. That's hard enough. That's hard enough. But David there was no wondering room for David. Am I the reason my child died? Or no, David, you are. This child will die because of you. Whew. That's heavy. And further, God tells David, and your family is always going to have problems because of what you've done. And we can talk about Absalom. Oh, what's the others?
Adonijah.
Say it again.
Adonijah. He tried, that was after he died. He tried to usurp
Yes,
the throne
yes.
of Solomon.
Abner. Abner's who I'm thinking of. Abner. And so David had lots of problems in his family. And God told him that. So I know you all are spiritually mature people. But there are a lot of people who blame God for things that they are to be blamed for. So Peter says, we'll go ahead and read Peter. 1 Peter chapter 4. So the Lord told us we're going to suffer. That's the foregone conclusion. In this world you will have tribulation. So it's not a what if, it's just when. And the Bible, as I said, has pages and pages and pages and pages and more pages of telling us how we are to deal with that. How we are to deal with that. Now, it says, Peter wrote to a suffering group of people in verse 12, and he said, "Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trials which is to try you as though some strange thing happened to you." Don't be surprised. Don't be shocked when tragedy strikes. That's what he said. Now, that's really easy to say. It's really hard to practice. He's just saying, this is going to happen. And then he goes on to say, "But rejoice to the extent that you are partakers of Christ's suffering, that when his glory is revealed, you may also be glad with exceeding joy. If you are reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are you, for the Spirit of glory and of God rest upon you. On their part he is blasphemed, on your part he is glorified. But let none of you suffer as a murderer or a thief, an evildoer, a busybody in other people's matters." So don't suffer because of evil or wrong that you commit. But he says if anyone suffers as a Christian, that's different. Let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this manner. For the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. And if it begins with us first, well, then what's going to be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? Now, if the righteous one is scarcely saved, then where will the ungodly and the sinner appear? Therefore, let those who suffer according to the will of God commit their souls to him in doing good as to a faithful Creator. So let us not suffer for doing wrong, but if we suffer because we are Christians and follow the Lord and serve him, well, then you're blessed. And be committed to that. And don't think of that as a shameful thing, but wear it as a badge of honor, as many have done in the past. Now, we solved that problem. Let's go to the next. When we are not the cause of our suffering. This one is the big problem. So I don't really hear a lot of people saying, I just don't understand why I'm suffering because, I sin so much. I don't really hear that. I hear, I don't think that I've done anything that should have brought this upon me and my family. That's the big problem. According to people who keep up with this kind of information, it is the number one question people have about God. Why does God allow innocent suffering? Now, I'll use the term innocent in a relative sense. None of us are really innocent. We're all sinners, and we all struggle with our own sinful tendencies. But I mean, relatively speaking, that person did nothing that we could point to and say they caused their own suffering. It is the number one argument against God posed by the atheist. How could an all-good God allow good people to suffer at no fault of their own? Why does God allow natural disasters to kill people in the night? Why does God allow babies to die? And I've done baby funerals. Why does God allow crazy, deranged people to go into churches and shoot people up? Is our God not powerful enough, strong enough to stop that? He is. And why does He allow that? I will tell you this. This question has been asked by greater people than I. This is a question that has been asked for many thousands of years. And I will tell you this. There's never been an answer to the why question. There's never been, this is why I allowed this, God said. But there are many answers to the so what. So this happened, so what can I do now? So that's the answer that I offer to you today, because that's the Bible answer. So let's jump in here, and I say many have asked this kind of question. Gideon asked that question. Remember Gideon, the trumpet and the torches, and Gideon's 300 and all of that? Gideon was a great leader. We might even argue that he was the greatest of the judges, if you don't count Samuel. Samuel was a judge. But of the book of Judges, Gideon's maybe the greatest of all. But here's what he said when he first met the angel that came to talk to him. He says, "Oh my Lord," he's talking to the angel. He says, "If the Lord," as in God, "is with us, then why has all this happened to us? And where are His miracles, which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites." Now, Gideon, as I understand, was a good guy. He was just a hard-working fella. He was trying to make ends meet. He was a farmer. And he was trying to hide all of his stuff from the Midianites, because the Midianites were coming down and taking all of his stuff, all of his food and all of his grain and all of his grapes and all of his grape juice and all the things that he was trying to provide his family for, and they'd come down and steal it all. And Gideon finally just threw up his hands and said, "I guess God's not with us. I guess all those miracles about Egypt, and that was good for their time, but not for ours." It's interesting that after that, The angel says, go in that might of yours. He said, go in that might. That kind of spirit that you have, Gideon, go in that kind of spirit. Gideon became a great leader of God. Psalm 73 is the one that I always think about, as in asking why God. And this is, why do the evil prosper while the righteous suffer? I guess it's a psalm of Asaph. So I guess Asaph wrote this. I don't know if he wrote this autobiographically. I'll just go with that. I don't have any better answer. So Asaph wrote this, and he said, truly God is good to Israel, to such as are of pure heart. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. I almost fell over the cliff. My steps had nearly slipped, because I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Everybody not serving the Lord seemed to be making the most money. I mean, there's a lot of people home at night, and there's a lot of great TV on, right? We could be watching the SEC tournament right now. Just seems like all the wicked people get all the breaks, while all the righteous people have all the suffering. No pain in their death. Their strength is firm, not in trouble. They don't get in any kind of trouble. They're not plagued like other men. And therefore, they're so prideful and arrogant, violence covers them like a garment. Their eyes bulge out in abundance. They have more than their heart could wish. They scoff and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens. They even talk about you, God, if you didn't know that. And their tongues walk through the earth. Therefore his people return here, and waters of a full cup are drained by them. They take everything that we've got, and they say, how does God know? See, God, they're challenging you, and you sit up there in heaven, don't do anything. And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly, who are always at ease. They increase in riches. Surely I've cleansed my heart in vain. Whew. Washed my hands in innocence. For all day long I have been plagued and chastened every morning. And I said, if I speak this way, behold, I would have been untrue to the generations of your children. When I thought how to understand this, well, it was too painful for me until I went into the sanctuary of God. I went to God's house, had time in prayer with God, and then I understood. I understood their end. I understood that they stand in slippery places. And I won't read the rest of it, but just to say, I understand that they're headed to destruction. And God, you have our best interest in heart. They're going to be destroyed. We're going to be rewarded. Doesn't mean that this life is always going to be easy for the righteous. It might be the very opposite. I have told people when they've accepted Christ as their Savior, I've told them, now you know life just got really hard for you, right? Now it's the best life, no doubt. It's the best life. But it is by far not the easiest life. Because, and I won't get too far into my lessons, that's coming at the end. You know that we're not living in God's world, right? This is Satan's world. We live in God's creation, but we live in Satan's world. He's the God of this age. He's the ruler of this world. So this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. Diane, finish it up. Put you on the spot right there. Habakkuk. Y'all know that guy, right? Do you say Habakkuk or Habakkuk? I say Habakkuk because I'm from Arkansas. Habakkuk was a prophet of God. And you know what? I don't mean for any of us in any way to be irreverent. But I do believe that you have every right and God wants you to speak your mind. And might I even say it this way, speak your heart. Yes, God's got big shoulders. Now don't be ugly and irreverent. Don't say stuff like, I hate you, God. Don't say stuff like that. But you can ask God why questions. Whoever told you you can't ask God why lied. You can ask God why all day long. And I get this from the greatest source, because when Jesus was hanging on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? If I read that right, that's a why question. Ask God why all day long. Habakkuk was one of those prophets that asked God why. First questions he asked God, it's in all the chapters of Habakkuk. I think there's 3 of them. It is an Old Testament book. I'm not making this up. It's not like the book of Hezekiah. There isn't a book of Hezekiah, but there is a book of Habakkuk. So, first question he asked God, he says, God, why are you letting all of these ungodly Jews live? Kill them. Destroy them. Punish them. Habakkuk had it up to here with his people. Hey, any of us like that? Are you all about sick of politics? Are you about sick of wars and all that stuff? You about sick of listening to how all the politicians are making themselves rich while our gas is almost $4 a gallon? You're kind of sick of that stuff, aren't you? Habakkuk had it up to here with the nation of Israel, and he said, God, you need to do something about this. And God came to Habakkuk and he said, I am. And he explained to Habakkuk that there was coming a day very soon that he was going to bring down the Chaldeans. Now that's another name for Babylonians. He said, I'm going to bring the Babylonians down. And he said, I don't know if you've seen their army lately, but they've got an army that will flatten a forest. And he said, they're coming. And he said, they are going to wipe Israel off the map. They're going to destroy the temple, and it's going to be ugly. Do you ever give those answers? You know, somebody just begged you for an answer forever, and you finally answer their question, and they don't like what you give them? Habakkuk did not like God's answer. He said, are you kidding me? You're going to take the more evil Babylonians to destroy the evil Jews. Now that don't make sense, God. And he said, I'm going to sit on my rampart and see how you answer. He said, I'm going to sit right here and I'm going to wait for you to give me an appropriate answer. Well, God kind of cleaned his clock in chapter 3 and left Habakkuk on his face, basically telling Habakkuk, look, I'm running this show and I don't need your help. And I think sometimes we need to learn that, is that God's running this and he really doesn't need our help. There are times, though, that we wonder, just as the apostles wondered, what is in this for us? I mean, we have sacrificed a whole lot in service to you. The apostles asked Jesus that question. So we've given up basically our entire lives to serve you. And Jesus' answer to them was this: you've not given up one single thing that will not be rewarded to you multiple times over. So there is not a single sacrifice that you have made or a single suffering that you have suffered that will not be rewarded multiple times over. May not be in this life, probably won't be in this life, but it will be. Next slide, please. So God is not the cause of all suffering. God is not the cause of all suffering. Being sinners, living among sinners, in a sin-cursed world causes a lot of the evil and suffering in our world. I don't know about you, but this is one of those pet peeves of mine. You know, you take out this insurance and it has a disclaimer in it somewhere that says, we do not cover any act of God. And I want to just scream. Because we can't talk about God in this culture unless it is something bad. I am not at all convinced that every natural disaster that happens in this world is an act of God. That's just one of my pet peeves, okay? Had to get that off my chest. So the next time you read that in one of your insurance documents, just circle it in red and hand it back to him and say, change this, because my preacher said so. A lot of the things that we suffer in this world is a result of our grandparents, Adam and Eve, sinning and bringing sin into this world. Ever since then, nothing has worked right. Men don't work right, women don't work right, children don't work right, the weather doesn't work right, everything is messed up. Satan is a cause of a lot of problems in this world. And he's real. We may not see him, but he's real, and he has demons, seemingly an innumerable amount of them, a lot of them, and they are real. And I just looked up a few places, but I know that Satan caused sickness. That woman that had the issue of blood, Jesus said that was Satan that did that to her. Now, I can't point at your sickness and say Satan did that. I'm not that smart. Now, if Jesus says that, count on it. But I can't do that. I don't know. But Satan causes sickness. John chapter 8:44, Satan is an instigator of murder. He's an instigator of murder. It says he's a murderer from the beginning. I kind of want to think, I don't know this for sure, but I kind of want to think that that is an allusion to Cain killing Abel. Because John later says in 1 John that Cain was of the wicked one, that is Satan. So from the very beginning, Satan instigated Cain to commit murder. He tempts people to do all kinds of evil things. Satan has no more control of me, though. Listen, Satan has no more control of me or you than what you allow. Okay? Satan can't grab a hold of you and take full control of you. The best that he can do, and it's pretty good, is he can tempt you with the things of this world and even the sin of your own self. But we can't overcome that. Remember what Jesus said, be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And John wrote to us, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. So we have more power within us than Satan has upon us. But he does cause us, tempts us to do all kinds of evil. I'm not sure, because I can't find any Bible reference. If the Bible doesn't say it, I don't know it. But I'm not really sure how much Satan has control of the weather. Because God is still creator, and he is still sovereign. Can Satan mess with the weather and cause tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes? And I don't know. He is the ruler of this world. He is the God of this age. Can he cause natural disasters? I don't know. It may just simply be caused by the fact that our world is messed up. It's broken. I mean, Romans chapter 8 tells us that our world groans and that the creation groans. And that idea of groaning there just really means noise. It just means a noise. And so, I don't know about you, but most natural disasters make noise. I've heard a tornado, have y'all? It's an eerie kind of noise. So, I've never heard an earthquake, but I understand it's quite, well, I've felt the 0.2s that we get around here. But I do know of someone who lived through one that was like a 7, and he said it was unbelievable. He said everything, it was so loud, and of course I guess everything shaking. And maybe that's just the nature of the sinful world we live in. It's broken. Now I'm going to shock you. But God is the cause of some suffering. God is the cause of some suffering. So let's look at that. I can't say anything unless I can back it up, right? The Bible does say that God is the cause of suffering, but never evil. But never evil. So, in Isaiah, and this is the great Isaiah passage, I am the Lord and there is no other. God said, and these are God's words. Isaiah is writing them, but God said this, I formed the light and created darkness. I make peace. I create calamity. What's calamity? It is a word that has a variety of meanings. Destruction is one. Calamity is problems and difficulties and sufferings. I, the Lord, do all these things. But God is one who takes no pleasure in wickedness, nor shall evil dwell with him. Let's go to James chapter 1 while I look at my watch. Oh, I got plenty of time. But Doug has a choir practice tonight, so I got to be done to give him plenty of choir practice time. I need to be fair to Brother Doug and the choir. So, chapter 1, verse 13. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. And I think the implication is with evil. God doesn't tempt anyone. Tempt has the idea of for evil intent. If you tempt someone, you want them to do something bad. God never does that. God never does that. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. So do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. God, in no way, God causes pain and suffering, and we're going to talk about that. But I want you to understand, it's never for an evil purpose. So let's talk about God causing some pain and suffering. The sin unto death. This is a really weird moment in Scripture. This is the only time we have any kind of language like that. Sin unto death. The only thing that I can say that this is, my best interpretation of this is when a believer, because it says, 1 John 5:16, a brother, if anyone sees his brother, and brother is code talk for any believer. So Joanne Young is my brother. Gene Owen is my brother. It's code talk for believers. If you see a believer sinning a sin which does not lead to death, well, pray for that person. And you can spare his life. for those who don't commit, or for those who commit sin not leading to death. But there is a sin, or there is sin leading to death. And John said, don't even pray about that. When God decides, and it's God's business, that this believer has gone so far away from Him into sin, God says enough's enough. He'll kill them. He will take their lives. Now, I can't, neither can you, I can't say when I'm preaching that person's funeral, now listen here, this dude laying in the caskets died of death because he sinned a sin leading to death. No, Preacher Phil can't say that. I'm not God. I can't say that. I don't know that. The best that I can do is say, it's there. It is there. And that God will, if necessary, take the life of His own children who have become so consumed in sin. And He even tells us, don't even pray about that. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 30, we just looked at this last Sunday when Paul was correcting the Corinthians' bad observance of the Lord's Supper. He said, that's why some of you are sick and some of you are, he says sleep, but it means dead, because you have misused and abused the Lord's Supper. I think God did that. That would be a sin unto death, wouldn't it? It doesn't take us long to read in the Old Testament where God sends a plague, where God sends fiery serpents among the camp, where God sends a drought upon the nation of Israel as a means of punishing them, chastening them. Go ahead and go to the next slide. God will destroy the wicked. Maybe right now, it may be that God decides, I'm going to destroy the wicked. God is God, I am not, neither are you. God does His work, I do mine. And if God decides to destroy the wicked, that's His prerogative. The Lord preserves all those who love Him, but all the wicked He will destroy. Psalm 145 and verse 20. And God chastens His children. God chastens His children. And I know that I am absolutely politically incorrect with this next statement. There is one good way to chasten children. Are you ready? Pain. Yeah, it doesn't always have to be physical pain, but you've got to make it hurt, or it don't work. It don't work. Now, that's us. And Hebrews chapter 12 says, you had fathers who chastened you, and they did the best that they could, but they didn't do it perfectly. But God chastens us as His children. And God uses pain and suffering as a means of chastening. So I'll read a little bit here. For whom the Lord loves, He chastens and scourges. That scourging means to inflict pain. Scourges every son whom He receives. No chastening seems to be joyful for the present. Never did like a spanking. Have to tell you, I never did like giving them either. But it was necessary. Had to be done. It's not joyful for the present, but what does it do? It's painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Okay, so if I've made my case enough, we must admit that some pain and suffering that we might suffer is God's hand of chastening. I am not telling you every time. We've already talked about many other forms. It might be Satan. It might be just the old sinful world in which we live. You might be going through a Job moment where you're suffering but innocent from any cause of it. But also, there is chastening. And it's painful. And God does inflict pain upon His children to produce that peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who are trained by it. I'm going to spoil the ending, but this is a good place to spoil it. News flash. God is less concerned about your comfort than He is your righteousness. God is less concerned about your comfort and more concerned about your righteousness. God's ultimate goal is not to make you comfortable. His ultimate goal is to make you righteous. And sometimes, for us to reach that righteous place, we have to go through suffering. Okay, this is a good comment and question moment. And I've got about 5 minutes, and this might be a good place to mark on our sheets that says, start here next time. Questions? Or comments? No complaints tonight. Glenn, if you got a complaint, sit back down. Go ahead.
There was Satan went out from the Lord, and he did blow down that house with all the children.
Yes.
And I think that was clear it was from him. But that's the only one I can find.
Yep. Oh, you're talking about Job. I had to. Yeah. Good point. Good point. So what Glenn didn't tell you, he and I have a line of thinking. It's silent communication. He's talking about, can Satan control the weather? So a moment where Satan did control the weather was we think a tornado or a wind or something that blew away Job's family and his home. Other comments or questions? Don't be shy if you have one.
I'm still concerned or confused about that John 5:16.
Yeah, sin unto death.
Right, where a believer
Mm-hmm.
can be, it's not a once saved, always saved type of thing.
Well, we're not talking about send them to hell.
Okay.
We're taking their physical life.
Okay, all right. They're still can go to heaven.
Yep. And one example I think of that would be the Corinthians. I'm assuming they were believers. I don't know that for sure. I'm assuming they were believers. And God killed them for abusing the Lord's Supper. Other comments or questions? All right, we'll call it quits here. We'll pick it up next time, and we'll get into the innocent suffering. And so that's really the ones we really struggle with. When a baby dies, someone who's, it's kind of like when I see, one example, I can give you an example. One of my good friends, Dennis Smithson, lost his wife to cancer. She just died either early in the morning hours or yesterday. It was in the night, early morning hours. She was on hospice care, second time with cancer, and she's with the Lord now. And I always make this kind of statement. I said, I could have picked out a lot better candidate to die than she. Seems like the good people die and all the bad ones are left. You know, you have a head-on collision between a drunk and a Christian family going to church, and all the Christian family dies and the drunk survives. Why does that kind of stuff happen? I'm not going to have answers for you. I'm just going to, the so what. I can tell you so what. So what do we do now? Any other comments or questions? All right. A few announcements and then we'll do prayer requests. For Sunday, we will have our March business meeting right after the morning service. Had a really good meal tonight. Had a lot of people there. And we invite you to come out. Cost you $6 per person, $20 per family. For four, if you have a family of four, $20. And I will tell you that my wife and I went out to eat the other night, and it cost me $60. And I read that receipt 5 times, and I said, "Where's $60 in that I just ate?" So we'll help you with a $20 meal. So that's pretty cheap. This coming Saturday at 2 o'clock, there will be a bridal shower for Ainsley Castleberry. You see, in your last Sunday bulletin tells you where she always registered. And I think we sent out some emails on that. And so there's going to be a senior game day on the 17th. That's a week from Thursday. The 17th, 2 to 4 p.m. here at the Fellowship Hall. Any other announcements? All right. Well, this is the time I say goodnight to our online audience. God bless you. Thanks for being with us. Love to hear from you. Send me an email, text message, and if you have a prayer concern, we'd love to help you pray for it. Good night.